reverse shrimping. This is a kind of shrimping that never gets any attention and yet is absolutely crucial, especially in the higher levels of the sport, to become effective in bottom position. Conventional shrimping that we just saw in the previous sequence is a pushing movement. Now, what is reverse shrimping? That's a pulling movement, where instead of planting a foot and pushing off the mat, I plant my toes and pull on the mat. We're going to reach along the mat and plant the ball of the foot and the toes on the mat. The complete opposite of what we do in a normal shrimp, where we plant the heel and push. Here, we're planting the ball of the foot and we pull ourselves towards that foot. So we plant and pull. We plant and pull. We plant and pull. Very often, you will find it difficult to get out of a given pin type situation, and you need to change the angle to get the ball rolling. Another very common scenario is one where you're defending a very strong form of guard pass, and as a result you need to change the angle between you and your opponent to be effective. Okay, let's say for example my training partner was standing over me and he's done a great job of passing my legs and is coming around to the side. Not only is he coming around to the side, but he started to get damn close to chest contact. As a result, he's gone past my initial frames, and as he comes down towards chest-to-chest position, he's getting very, very close. He's come onto my forearms. You can see it's going to be hard work to defend from here. Okay, he's in a position where he can start pushing my knees down, and my knees are now facing the wrong way to put him back in guard. Okay, so as I feel an opponent getting closer and closer, and my knees are being pushed off in the wrong direction, that's where reverse shrimping comes in. I put my foot on the mat, and I pull my ass towards my foot. As my frame comes up into place, I now get opportunities to throw my legs back in from here. We're in a position where we can go back in and retain our guard. So we're going to take our foot and we're going to give it a little bump and a reverse shrimp. It gets our body back inside. Okay. Now from here, as Giancarlo comes down on top and he tries to create those new angles, we bring knees together, spin underneath our training partner, and from here we're back into a good sound attacking position. From a situation where I've gotten deep around my opponent's legs, like so, and we want to start tilting our training partner over, we're going to trap our training partner's ankle from here. I do a good job of tilting my opponent, but he does a good job of basing out with his right arm. So from here, we've almost got him up, but he's not quite there yet. Okay. Under these circumstances, we're going to hit reverse shrimping. I plant my right foot on the mat, and I start pulling myself down towards the floor and knock the man over. Even when Giancarlo goes to follow my movement, it's so difficult for him to keep up with that transition from reverse shrimp to standard shrimp. Reverse shrimp starts it. Conventional shrimp finishes it. Let's understand something. It's an important part of the sport. The idea behind scooting is that it's a more efficient way for me to move forwards and backwards than shrimping is in terms of distance covered. It's easier for me to cover more distance when I'm in a seated position, scooting, than it is when I'm in a supine position, shrimping. Okay. So the idea behind this is, if I'm down on my back, I can only move so fast. But when I'm seated, I can move both forwards and backwards much more rapidly and cover much more distance. Okay. When I'm down here, if I use reverse shrimping, it puts a definite limit on how fast I can move. Good reasons to stay on bottom might be because your opponent's better than you in the standing position, you're reluctant to stand up, or you just have some kind of gain from bottom. Perhaps you're someone who favors the idea of entering into your opponent's legs for leg lock actions or what have you. These are good times for you to stay in the seated position and scoot. Okay, you're going to be much, much faster and much, much more active and have a wider range of movements available to you in a seated position than you will down here in a supine position where you're more or less stationary. Understand that if we are in a seated position like this, if the situation should demand it, it's very easy for you to go straight back to your back and resume more conventional supine positions as well. Two ways to scoot, two-handed methods and one-handed methods. When we go forward, it's almost always one-handed methods, like so. Okay, the idea is I'm going to have a foot which plants, and if I want to throw my body forward, I plant on that foot, everything goes forward, and I can cover quite a bit of distance in a short motion. When I go backwards, I have the option of one hand scooting methods and two-handed scooting methods. Two-handed scooting methods are faster, but they do tie up both of your arms. So you've got to move quickly to where you want to go, and then reassert your various methods of posturing. As a general rule, you can scoot forward without hands, but it's not a particularly fast-moving way to do it. You might want to do this for tactical reasons, but for movement reasons, it's better to plant a hand. Okay. As a general rule, we don't encourage planting two hands and moving forward. That's way too risky. It's okay to move quickly backwards, like so, and reassert yourself, but I don't recommend coming forwards towards our opponent like so. Okay, we always want to present a side-on body position to our opponent and move forwards behind the cover of our two knees, rather than presenting a situation where my opponent can pass on either side as I'm scooting forwards. So the first thing he has to do is close distance. Then the second thing he has to do is get angle. Okay. If I just stay stationary and I give him distance and angle, he's going to pass my guard at some point. So our whole thing is I always want my opponent in front of my legs. Okay. Anytime my opponent moves outside of my legs, warning signs go off that that's a bad thing. Okay. So whenever I see my opponent getting closing distance and getting angle, our thing from here is always to scoot back and recover distance. Okay. I always want my opponent on one side of my body. If I present my body to his center line, he can pass this way or he can pass this way, and I don't know which. Okay. But if I put my opponent on one side of my body, he can't pass this way, it's too far to go. He takes a risk. If he goes in this direction, I can easily trip my opponent out of balance. Okay. So now he can only pass in this direction. So now I know where he's going to go. Okay. So this is the idea behind scooting. It's a method of distance management. Start over with here. So if my opponent is aggressively coming towards me, it might behoove me just to scoot back on two hands for a brief period of time. Okay. So if I see him make a big aggressive movement, I might just do like so. So now again, he's in front of my legs. Okay. If his movements are less aggressive, then I'm probably just going to stay with the one-handed method. Just like so. Every time he goes to move forward, we monitor distance. A second kind of problem is an opponent who's retreating from us. Perhaps, for example, he's afraid of your leg lock game. He knows if he stays in front of us in situations like this, it's pretty easy for us now to go into our training partner's legs. Okay. So he might be saying, you know, I don't want this guy going into my legs. So he's playing a tactical game of moving backwards. If I just go like so, or just try to move towards them, it's hopeless. I'll never get a hold of this guy. So when we see someone moving away from us, we have to cover distance. The way we do this is by putting a foot on the floor and planting it, just like so. And then I want to physically throw my body towards my opponent so we make distance on him and cover distance across the floor and get to an opponent who's trying to retreat. If I have an opponent, I'm just moving in this way, here he's at distance, I've got to cover distance on this guy. Okay, I'm not going to do it two-handed, because now he can just jump past my guard in either direction. Okay, I don't have any means of posting it to move it. So I have got to cover quite a bit of distance in some of these cases. And the way we do this is by planting a foot. So I switch, normally I have my body like so. I put my foot down on the floor and I physically jump off the mat. So everything comes off the mat and we cover distance towards our opponent. Okay, so once again, we're here in front of our training partner, he's moving away, he's very cautious and won't engage with me. So here I plant, and then we just throw our body, and now we've closed distance on our opponent, and we're in a situation now where we have contact and we're ready to play. Some of you might know this by another term, technical stand-up, a hip heist. The idea here is that from a given seated position, like so, we're going to put a post hand down on the floor and a post leg here on the mat. This creates a situation where all of your weight is carried on a hand and a foot. And that's going to create an unweighted second leg, which is going to be a heist leg. Okay, so we dig into the mat just like so. We take our hips off the mat, and I turn my chest down to the floor, and I come up to either a knee or to my feet. Okay, and in this way, we go from a seated position to a standing position, either on one knee or 2 feet. The advantage of this is it takes us from a given height, my head is a certain height when I'm seated, to a situation where there's a possibility of greater height. And from here, things like front headlocks, guillotines become very important. The idea, we're here in front of an opponent in a seated position. A supine hip heist, okay, we're down here on the floor, now we're in a seated hip heist. So we put a post hand and a post foot, and my body goes over to the side. I was like so, and I convert like so. That creates the post leg, post hand. We have a free hand, which often snaps our opponent or pushes on our opponent, either pulling down or pushing into the mat. Then it creates a heist leg. The heist leg enables us to turn our chest down to the floor. Never try to heist with your chest facing the ceiling. Okay, you're very easy to knock backwards under those circumstances. But when I go chest down, I'm quite robust here. Okay, now my knee comes back, and as a result, we've gained height on our opponent. You can make that height gain even more dramatic by coming up to your feet. Open guard, my opponent's on 2 knees. When we work in a situation like this, Giancarlo's head is slightly higher than mine because he's on his knees. I'm on my ass. Okay, so he has a height advantage over me. As we play in this position, I might want a height advantage over him. I can't do it in this position. So from here, I come up and I pass. Now my head is higher than his head, and as a result, we can start bringing people forward into various kinds of attack. You can even stand up and go into flying submission or what have you. Okay? So from a situation where we start off just like so, we're playing, we probably have a post hand, post on him, a post hand, a post on the floor, a post foot, and then from here a heisting leg. So we turn, chest down, and we come up, either to a knee or to a foot. Your choice. I normally go up to a knee, and then I gauge things from here. I look at my opponent's reaction. If I see him trying to come aggressively into me, I might go right back down to the floor and look to sweep. If I see he hasn't reacted, then I might go forward and attack a guillotine, etc., etc. Common mistake you see with hip heisting. People do it with their chest facing the ceiling, okay? If Giancarlo lifts his ass off the mat and his chest faces the ceiling, you will see that he has no base whatsoever. It can be knocked over like a reed in the wind. But if Giancarlo turns his chest down to the floor and heists like so, takes his ass off the mat, he's much more robust in this position and can handle the pressure much better. It's much less likely now that I'm going to knock him down. But when the chest is exposed to the ceiling, single hand will put him down, okay? So that's the most important physical requirement when you go to work like this. Be aware that there is some danger of back exposure when you perform these movements. That's why the post hand is important, okay? Because it's that prevents me getting to my opponent's back. If there wasn't that, there's some danger here of a skilled opponent moving around behind you and causing problems, you know? So that's the value of the post hand. This is leg pommeling. This refers to a jousting action on our part where we fight for position with our feet and knees so that we don't give up superior position to an opponent and make it easy for them to pass our guard. It also sets up offense where you can go into various forms of submission holds and bottom, provided you can use your feet and knees dexterously. With great dexterity. From a situation where I'm supine, I'm just going to take my 2 feet and we're going to engage in circles with our feet. I go initially in a given direction, then I reverse the direction, and we're pommeling with our feet. You will notice when I line up with the camera that there are actually 3 separate axes of movement: feet, knees, and hips. And only will you maximize your progress when all 3 are engaged, okay? So the one which most people notice are the feet, because they move in the biggest circle. But you will notice also that my knees are also moving. And then, as we get more aggressive with our pommeling, you'll see that my hips also move. So feet, knees, and hips. My hips are moving side to side. My feet are moving in big circles, and my knees are moving in very small circles. But all 3 together constitute pommeling. Then we switch direction, and we get the same movements. It's fine to start off with a single leg pommel. Interestingly, when you're actually going live against a resisting opponent, you normally use a single leg pommel rather than a double leg pommel. Now let's combine shrimping with a pommel, because that's normally how it's used in a competitive situation. His knees in my guard. The good thing for him is to get underneath my legs. And if he can do this, it's quite easy for him to start passing my legs. I don't want to give him such a major advantage. So it's important for us to be able to consistently take our foot and pommel it through. So my foot goes from a vulnerable position over his back to one where it's there, underneath, in a safe position. When he goes to lift my leg now, it's impossible. Here, if he lifts my leg, immediate effect. So we always look to get our hips out, and then from here, pommel to a better position. Not only is this defensively sound, but it will set up many forms of offense from which we can get on the attack from bottom position. From situations where opponents try to pommel their arms in, we always look to pommel our feet out. He pommels arms in, and we pommel feet out. He pommels arms in, and we pommel feet out. And in this way, we can keep ourselves in a good attacking position. Let's look at leg scissoring. As a general rule, for most of the more common forms of guard passing, your opponent will pass one leg at a time. Understand that as one of your legs get passed, it is up to you to get the other leg to engage and defend the leg that is being attacked. So as one leg gets passed, the other leg must kick in and provide your defense until you can recover your guard overall. In a situation where I start off in front of my opponent goes to pass on a given side of my body, comes around to my left-hand side, okay? It's up to me now as my opponent passes and my knees go to face away from my opponent. He's passing on my left-hand side. What he wants is to get around my leg and make my knees point away from him. So the onus is on us now to take our other leg, in this case my right leg, and throw it back to face my opponent. So every time he goes to pass on a given side, my knees end up pointing in the wrong direction. So I need to bring my knees back to face him. And in this way, we learn to scissor our legs from one side across to the other. So as an opponent passes on one side, our legs, or in this case, one leg, recover and bring us back into a winning position. Say, for example, he's down 2 knees and gets underneath my leg and starts passing in this direction. I need to be able to post and bring my leg over. He goes to pass in the opposite direction. From here, I need to be able to post and bring my leg over. He goes to pass in a given direction, you post and throw the leg over. So every time I see him going in a given direction, we want to create a frame and a scissoring of the legs until ultimately we can face our opponent and go back into a good attacking position. Okay? If, for example, my opponent's in a Toriando type situation and goes to throw my legs by and past, we want to be able to post, and then from here, scissor my leg over my opponent's body. Then from here, we align ourselves and find ourselves now in a situation where from here, we get back into our various forms of counter-attack to put the man down. We're about to take a new turn now. Everything we've been looking at so far involved bottom position where we were on our back. But please understand there are two bottom positions in Jiu-Jitsu, guard position and turtle position. So the second form of bottom position in Jiu-Jitsu is situations where we're in a turtle type situation, any variation of turtle position, and our opponent's on top of us and behind us, or potentially in front of us, okay? But he's on top, we're underneath. So most of the time when we talk about bottom position in Jiu-Jitsu, we talk about situations where we're on our back, working like so. Okay, but please understand there are two kinds of bottom positions in our sport, and this is the second kind, where we're in some variation of turtle position and working with an opponent on top of us, either behind or in front. Sit out works in situations where we're underneath an opponent in this prone position and he's in front of us. It might be because he has a front body lock, it might be because we're in on a single leg and he has a whizzer. Whatever the reason, we're in a situation just like so. What we want to be able to do is create a post hand, and then from here take a hand off the floor and create a sit out action where I bump back with my elbow and I sit out and my body comes up to an upright posture, chest out, shoulders back, head up just like so. Okay, so I start here on my knees, then from here elbows come up off the mat, and then from this position a leg comes out. That creates an angle where we can push the hips forward, the head goes back, the shoulders go back, and we hit a short sit coming down to our hip just like so. Now the single most common mistake that I see when people hit this move is they oversit and they come through to a position where you lose stability here and you can be taken back onto your back. That's not what you wanted. You want to stay chest down to the floor after the movement. So we start off just like so. From here we build up, we put a leg up, and then that creates space for my knee to slide, and we slide through to a hip and come into a position just like so. As a result, the opponent who was on top of us will tend to tip and fall and lose balance as we come out. Right now, our opponent, our imaginary opponent, is balanced on the flat of our back. What we want to do is create a situation where our back changes angle and he slides off. His body weight just slides off like water off a duck's back. And then from this situation, we would come back and into our opponent and go on the attack. The first situation we want to look at is one where our opponent has a front body lock. So he's on top and he's taking his two arms behind my two arms and he has a body lock just like so. So he locks on tight, tight, tight. From here, we're going to start by taking our leg out. And then from here, my elbow comes to Giancarlo's elbow, and I hit a simple sit out that takes my opponent and creates a situation where I've gained height on my opponent like so. Okay. Now from here, it's an easy thing for us to come up towards our opponent's back and switch positions away from bottom to top position. For a situation where my opponent has the front body lock, I may decide initially to come up into a tripod type situation and get my knees and elbows off the mat. This will create an easier turn and a bigger amplitude in the movement. Whereas the shoulders and hips come back, we hit that sit out, we hit once again a situation on the opponent where we can get through into good position. Another common situation where we hit this one is out of a single leg situation down on the floor. So I've come up into single leg and my opponent has a good whizzer on just like so. As I feel my opponent go to sprawl and I feel I'm losing the leg. Look how as we lose the leg, we get an opportunity to hit that short sit. And then from here come back into the legs and into our opponent's back or into another attempt with a single leg or what have you. Shoulder rolls, Granby rolls, and forward rolls. Of the three in the sport of Jiu-Jitsu, shoulder rolling is probably the most important. It's the one we use most of the time, but the other two are pretty important too. So we'll cover them all together. We have here a basic shoulder roll. So we start with an opponent out to our side, we put our shoulder down to the mat, and then from here we create a situation where my feet come up and I get my toes into the mat so I can put my head inside my own legs. And as a result, we can put an opponent back in guard position. The key idea here is to go from a situation where my head is outside my legs to a situation where my head is inside. That's a weight-bearing position where we can easily put an opponent back in guard even when he's trying to stop us with his body weight. So here we are. We have an opponent. We choose one side. Let's say he's out to my right-hand side. And from here, shoulders come down to the mat. My legs turn out. And then from here, we start that pushing action. I split my legs. And from here, my head is between my own legs. And as a result, we can go down into guard position and put that man back in guard. This is designed to create a situation where we started in a turtle position and finished in a guard position. The understanding is turtle position it's an effective bottom position, but it has the increased risk of back exposure. The width of your legs, how far they split, is not particularly important. Some people go very wide, some people go quite narrow. Remember that ultimately, you only have to put your opponent back in guard, which means your knees as wide as his hips. So you can see you don't really need to spread your legs very far apart to do that. In fact, you could even argue it's not a good idea to spread the legs far apart, because that'll make it easier for your opponent to go into leg lock counters when you get into more advanced aspects of the sport. Typically, when I hit this move, I like to keep my legs relatively close together, because many of my students are very dangerous with leg locks, and so it's not a smart thing to separate legs far apart where the leg get isolated one from the other. We have an opponent out to our right-hand side, and I notice he has a tight waist grip and arm around my waist. I do not use this move when my opponent has a seatbelt grip. This would not be an intelligent time to hit a shoulder roll, because this will he will literally stay on me and get hooks in. So the intelligent time to use this move is when my opponent has unlocked hands, okay? But if the hands are locked above the shoulder, seatbelt grip, this is not the time to shoulder roll, okay? Instead, it's used in times where he has unlocked hands like so. Now from here, look how I swish it with my legs. I shoot my arm through, strong arm, and from here I come up into this position and I roll towards the armpit. A very common mistake here is people roll towards the hips. That's a disaster. You'll see, in this case, it's from tight waist. If I roll towards the hips, he just pulls my hips and it's all gone. Okay? It's very important we roll towards the armpit. So that requires us to create a drive leg where I go through with the shoulder and come up just like so. Now from here, we put a leg on his back. Somebody comes back to face us. You can go into closed guard, you can go into triangles, whatever you want. But the important thing is that idea of coming up, strong tight waist. I come up, it's like here. Now, look how as my head goes between my legs, even as Giancarlo puts weight on me, my legs are connected to the floor. If there's no connection with the mat, he can pull and put me down. Okay? So I need those drive legs connected to the mat. I come out, my head goes through underneath, I aim my hips at his armpit, and from here, we're pretty effective. Now I can take my two hands and fight his hands. And as a result, we can come back into winning positions. Second movement is a Granby roll. So what we typically do for Granbys is we'll come with our knees off the mat. So if I have an opponent out to my right hand side, and from here we'll come up into a situation where we tripod just like so, and then I take my foot and put it here like so. If I keep my feet in this position, my opponent can throw a hook into my leg and start scoring points on me, causing problems. But when I step across, I shut that hook out. It also creates a situation now where I can just put my leg through and come down to a hip. Okay, and from here we face our imaginary opponent, we're back in neutral position and ready to go. So from a turtle situation, we're here, we want to get out and away and create space away from our opponent. We come out, and I come across with my foot. And as a result, we come up not to guard position, but up to a hip, neutral position, from where we can come back and grapple with our opponent from neutral. The body lock. Behind me, this might be a good time for us to hit, say for example, a Granby. He locks on a tight body lock. From here, we're going to come up, tripod position. If I stay like this, he can take his right foot and hook in. We don't want that happening. So we cross step. Now when he tries to get the right foot in, it's not going to happen. It's not there to be taken. Now from here, I just hit that Granby, and we end up in neutral position, facing our opponent, ready to go. This stands in contrast to the third form of rolling that we must become familiar with, forward rolls. Here, we come up to our given base, like a 4-point type position, and from here I just take my body straight on through and I roll over my scapula. Don't roll over any one shoulder, we roll over the scapula in a direct forward motion. This is typically a very useful entry into leg locks when someone is behind us, and we come up like so. Then from here we reach between the legs, catch our opponent by the legs and roll straight on through into various forms of advanced leg lock. This one does require a little more flexibility than the shoulder rolls. Shoulder rolls require almost no flexibility. Granbys require almost no flexibility. This one does require that your head can go level with your knees. So if I'm level with the camera here, you'll see in slow motion that as we come in, my head will have to come almost inside my knees so that I look up to the ceiling when I go through. So it's not crazy flexibility, but a little more flexibility is required for this than the first two rolls we looked at. When my opponent's all the way standing behind me and has a body lock, another good one from these situations is just to roll straight on through. As he locks tight from here, if I just put my head down and we roll straight into our training partner's legs. And from here, many ways we can go to work. Standing escapes, where we go from a bottom turtle position and you stand back up to a neutral position. These forms of escapes are often associated more with the sports of wrestling than they are with jiu-jitsu, but they become very important, especially in no-gi grappling, etc., etc. The way they're performed in jiu-jitsu has to be quite different from the way they're performed in wrestling, because the rules are obviously different. There's things which happen in jiu-jitsu which aren't really options in wrestling. So the manner in which we hit an inside leg stand-up is a little bit different in our sport. Where I'm in turtle position and I've decided I want to get back up to my feet and back to a neutral position and away from the ground. Let's say we have an opponent out to our right-hand side. I'm going to come up with the inside leg. So my hands and elbows have to come up off the mat. I start down like so in turtle position. We go hands to elbow, and then my inside leg comes up. From inside leg, I keep my elbow close to my opponent's body. My second hand monitors my opponent's hand. Okay. Then from here, in the sport of wrestling, typically when we go to stand up from situations like this, people come forward with the hips and put weight on the hands so it's easier to break the grips. That's a dangerous thing in the sport of jiu-jitsu, because in jiu-jitsu, an opponent behind you can simply just sit backwards and suck you back into the rear mounted position. So typically, I'm not an advocate of traditional hips forward, weight on the hands methods in the sport of jiu-jitsu. What I am an advocate of is weight forward, defending the hooks, and walking consistently away from our opponent. Then we fight the hands, get the hands off, and cut back and face the man. The main danger we're facing is the idea of our opponent getting hooks in, scoring points, or getting to a strangulation. So from an initial starting position, we want to come up, inside leg comes up. Then from here, everything is a walk forwards. Walking, monitoring hands, elbow in, and facing our opponent. A tight waist grip with his left arm, and a hand on my bicep, like so, and we want to get up to neutral position, okay? From here, I start off, hands on the mat, elbows off the mat. Then everything comes up, I catch my training partner's hand on this side, and my inside leg comes up. Now, as he tries to hold me back, from here I want everything going forward, walking away. I put his hand in my back pocket, and then from here I turn and face my opponent, and now I'm in a position to go in and counter-attack, or what have you. So once again, we have an opponent out to our side, he's behind us holding bicep, and we're starting position just like so. We want to get back up into standing position. So everything comes up. We catch the hand, we bring elbow and knee together, and from here we start walking away. If I start doing this, Giancarlo can suck me backwards, and from here hooks go in, and you just scored 4 points. Okay, so we don't want that kind of thing going on. So it's important that our body weight be going forwards. He goes to suck me back in here, it's hard. We monitor his leg. He tries to put hooks in, we're monitoring legs the whole time. Okay, and fighting hands, and now we're in perfect position to go in and counter. We're starting to look at solo drills for top position. Let's understand that there are far fewer solo drills from top position than there are from bottom, but they're important ones nonetheless. Probably the single most important skill when we're in top position in jiu-jitsu is the skill of passing your opponent's guard. Now, many of the movements associated with passing the guard do require a training partner, but there's a few that don't. Probably one of the more important ones that don't require a partner are the idea of standing up inside an opponent's closed guard in order to open it. Okay, so let's look at the solo drill associated with that. We're going to be inside an imaginary opponent's closed guard. He's got his legs around us, and from here we've got hands based on our training partner's biceps. From here we're going to stand up by putting one leg up and turning the other leg out. So as I go up to one leg, you'll notice my left leg goes up and my right leg goes out. This widens my base of support. My feet are very close together. That's not good. If I stand up like this, my feet are too close together, I have no base of support. So from here, we have to widen the base of support. That's how we do it. Then we come up to a second leg, and from this position, we come up into vertical posture. I want to finish with my shoulders over my hips. If my shoulders are in front of my hips, I can be pulled forward onto my toes and pulled back into various kinds of attack from guard position. So what we're looking for here, when we go to stand up, we have an imaginary opponent. We're locked in his closed guard. We pop up one, elbow and knee close together, elbow and knee close together, and then from here the hands come back and we come up into vertical posture. Hips forward, chest and shoulders back, and from here we can look to open the imaginary opponent's closed guard. So once again, here's our start position. Pop up, 1, 2, into vertical posture. Facing the camera, start position. Vertical posture, and we're ready to pass. We have a training partner with us. From an initial closed guard, we have hands on the biceps. We pop up, 1, 2, elbows come back, vertical posture, and then from here, we look to open our training partner's closed guard. Hands on biceps. Stand up to the hip line. Vertical posture, hips forward. And opening the closed guard. If you want to get a little more realistic with your movements, you might also incorporate, over to the side movement, you might also want to incorporate the idea of stepping out of your opponent's hands. Since when we go to stand up in a closed guard, a common thing is for our opponent to grab our ankles. So as we come up into vertical posture, we use a step out. This mimics the action. When we come up into vertical posture, often they will grab, drop their knees, and from here look to knock us down. So we practice skill of vertical step outs so we get away from his hands. As he goes to grip our ankles, he drops his knees. If I just stay here, he can knock me over. I can't kick straight back, lock tight to my ankles. I can't kick my legs straight back. He's holding in that direction. So I have to go forward and out. High leg and out. Okay? So once again, we pop up and high leg out. So in solo drill, we come up into vertical posture, high leg and out.